Testosterone doesn't like water, right? Just like cholesterol doesn't like water, just like oil, fats, they don't like water, right? What happens when you put water into oil, or the other way around? This is fucking Albert Einstein over here with the science experiments, right? It doesn't work. It doesn't mix. It floats on top, right? So how is it possible that testosterone is transported in via the blood, right? The blood is water. It's nothing more than water with some like stupidity in it, right? There's a problem, right? The body needs to make something like a ship in order to transport the cargo to the port, right? Transport the testosterone into the receptor that's present all over the body. And it evolved to do that, right? There's actually most of it. So if we look at blood testosterone, most of it is actually bound, right? It's bound to these, they're called glycoproteins, right? They're carriers. They carry the testosterone into the cell, similarly to how LDL, right, low density lipoprotein, carries cholesterol from the, from the gut where it's sort of absorbed, or from the liver where it's made, into the testicles, into the adrenals, right? So blood testosterone, it exists in, it can either be bound to something called SHBG, right? This is sex hormone binding globulin, or it can be bound to albumin. Albumin. Now you've probably heard of free testosterone, right? What is free testosterone? Well, the testosterone bound to sex hormone binding globulin is bound very, very tightly. It's in prison. There's no way it can be unbound. The only way that this can be unbound, it can be unbound is either when it's metabolized and excreted, or there are actually certain receptors present on certain cells. They're called megalin. And what happens when one of these molecules interacts with the megalin receptor? It essentially lets in both the sex hormone binding globulin and the testosterone inside the cell, but it separates, right? The testosterone does its bidding, but the sex hormone binding globulin is broken down inside of the cell. What about albumin? Well, albumin actually isn't bound so tightly to testosterone, right? If you look at, imagine this is like a little puzzle, right? Imagine this is albumin. I fucked up, whatever, this. It has like a couple of docking sites to testosterone, but it's not bound very, very tightly. In fact, it's bound so loosely that at any given time, about 1 to 2%, let's say 1 to 2% of that testosterone is free. Free, right? This is what we're interested in. Now, how does it become free? Because of shear pressure with tissues, with other albumin molecules. Some of it at any time, it's about 1 to 2%. It unbinds, right? And then it can act. It can go to the receptor, go to the cell, right? Without the receptor, obviously it's a steroid hormone. It doesn't need a receptor. And if it doesn't do that, if it doesn't go into the cell to be used, it just binds back to the albumin, right? That's the way it works. So at any given time, I don't know if there's like a million, gazillion molecules, I don't know how many, but at any given time, 1 to 2% of all total testosterone is free. So naturally, what we want to do is we want to increase this, right? And decrease this. Because since these molecules, they can actually, because of shear pressure, they can actually leave the testosterone free. We want as much testosterone bound to albumin as possible, right? And as little bound to SHBG as we can, right? So that we don't have to rely on megalin and stuff. So let's look at this first, right? How do you actually increase this whole process? Well, albumin, it's not like you can increase albumin by taking like vitamin D. Do you know what I mean? This doesn't work. But if you look at this albumin molecule that I drew over here in this tremendous drawing, it actually has a couple of docking sites. And it turns out that both testosterone, right, T, and glucose, both of these things, they actually compete for their place in this docking site. So in layman's terms, what does that mean? That when you have a lot of glucose in the blood, when you have an elevated blood glucose, right, there's going to be a lot of that glucose. So sometimes you're not going to have enough albumin to carry the testosterone. Right? Now what happens then is this testosterone, it has to be bound to something, right? Because if it's not, it's, you know, it doesn't like it. The blood doesn't want to have like random fucking oils and like sterols and stuff. So what happens is SHBG comes over, it takes it, and now it's fucked. Now it's, you know, now it's imprisoned. Now you have to do megalin, you have to excrete it and stuff. So what we can do is we can make sure that our blood glucose is never elevated, right? It's never so high that, you know, it takes over the testosterone. We can make sure that there's always enough docking sites in the albumin molecule so that the testosterone can dock, right? Now, how do we do this? This is very logical, right? This is common sense. Like lower your blood glucose. Blood glucose. How do we do that? Well, you can, for example, intermittent fast, right? You can fast for 20 hours like I do. Even when I'm bulking, I'm intermittent fasting. Do you know what I mean? You cannot eat a lot of times to spike the blood glucose. If you do eat, you can go for a walk, right? Go for a 20 to 30 minute walk. It does wonders, right? It literally acts like a sponge to your muscles for the glucose. So you don't have to, so the blood glucose isn't elevated. Your body doesn't like the elevated blood glucose. The brain doesn't like it, the body. In fact, it hates it so much that it literally employs a chemical which puts it into the cells, which shoves it into the cell, right? Insulin. So your body doesn't like blood glucose, just like cholesterol, right? We want the cholesterol in the cell. We don't want cholesterol roaming in the blood, right? We don't want the blood to be full of ships so that like no ships can pass. No, we want the blood. We want, you know, we want the river to be nice and like empty so molecules can pass by. And we want, you know, the speed to reach, you know what I mean? Fucking hell, you get what I mean. So blood glucose, lower blood glucose, walks after you eat carbs, don't eat too much carbs, don't eat too often, etc. So you always have docking sites for the albumin. So we know how to make the albumin work as best as possible, right? So let's look at the second side of the equation. This is like, let's say the more difficult part. This is the meat, right? This was the potatoes and stuff. How do we lower SHBG, right? The eternal question. So I'm not gonna tell you sleep 8 hours a day and like don't drink alcohol. Like obviously you know what you're doing, right? Like if you're watching a video like this, you know that alcohol is bad. You know, like you're not gonna eat McDonald's and you're gonna sleep well, and you know these things. Like fucking hell, I'm not gonna waste your time. First of all, let's talk about energy, right? Let's talk about your body's energy. So energy of body. Now, when your body has appropriate amounts of energy, whether that be from fats, whether that be from carbs, this is low. When you go on a cut, when you decrease your caloric input, this raises, right? So you want to make sure your energy is always high. You want to make sure that your body is always metabolizing whatever the fuck it is, glucose, glycogen, fats, everything, right? So what's the implementation here? Like, how can you take this information? What's the tool? Well, when you're bulking, right? When you're bulking, bulk, right? Eat like crazy. Eat as much as you want. Maybe, you know, avoid gluten, right? Avoid like McDonald's, don't eat sugar, don't eat seed oils. Like obviously, you know, we're not trying to like become a fat fuck and unhealthy. We want to be healthy but big, right? So avoid these things, you know, eat a lot of cheese, eat the same things you've been eating when you've been cutting, but more of it. And maybe also add carbs, right? Eat a lot of fruits, eat a lot of like honey and all these things, right? Maybe even rice, maybe even potatoes, maybe like carrots and stuff. But when you're cutting, don't just reduce the caloric intake and change nothing else, because you're gonna fuck this up. This is gonna go down, right? What did I tell you? When you reduce your caloric intake, your SHBG goes down. I mean, it goes up, right? So there's a lot of it, which means there's less free testosterone, less albumin-bound testosterone. So what's the implementation here? When you do decide to go on a cut because summer is approaching, you want to get your six-pack back, you want to, you know, and everybody has their own different like things they want to achieve with a cut. But do it right. Go on a keto diet for like 2-3 months or a month and a half, whatever. Go on carnivore. Make your body actually use that fat cells efficiently. Because if you continue eating carbs and you just decrease the caloric intake, sure, it can be done, right? But you're going to feel groggy, your metabolism is going to go to shit, your like thyroid hormones are going to go to shit, your human growth hormone is going to go to shit, you're going to feel worse, right? Why do we do all this? Why do we increase all this? Why? To feel tremendous, to live a tremendous life, right? So do it correctly. Go on carnivore for a bit. Be intentional with it. Because when you get your body adapted by just eating fats, just eating proteins, there's no other way for it but to use that fat, but to transform that fat. And then the signals it's going to send to your like appetite and stuff. If you get fat adapted and you have some belly, you have like 15% body fat or more, it's going to tell you, bro, you don't need to eat that much food. You know, I'm good with just 2,000 calories, right? Because I have enough storage. So this is what I want you to do. When you do cut, and it's a good time to make this video because it's, you know, April is coming, you know, we're cutting and stuff. I'm cutting myself personally, I'm on carnivore. Make sure you're efficient. Don't just follow the rule of kilocalories in, kilocalories out. That's bullshit. That doesn't take into account all these hormonal stuff, right? It's like, it's stupid science. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, thermodynamics. No, that's not how the body works. The body is not thermodynamics, right? So energy of the body, ensure that the body always has energy, whether that's fats, because a lot of fats have been shown to decrease SHBG, whether that's carbs, if you're bulking, that also has been shown to decrease SHBG. Make sure your body has fuel, because when the body has fuel, you have a lot of this, you have a lot of this, you have a lot of this, and be efficient with it. Okay, so number 2 is micronutrients, right? Micronutrients. Now, I talk about micronutrients a lot. When you actually give the micronutrients that the body needs, magic happens, right? Your body basically thrives. The reason you're hungry is because you don't have micronutrients, right? Or you're like insulin and leptin sensitivity is fucked. But which ones here are the most important? Well, boron definitely, right? Boron. What I like to do is I like to do 9 milligrams 5 days per week. That's a supplement form. It's basically this. Right, 3 milligrams or 3 capsules. That's boron. Then we have zinc. Zinc also supports or decreases SHBG. You can do 15 milligrams or microgram, I don't know now, milligrams of zinc citrate. You can do this every day. You can do this 5 days a week, like I do. But make sure that to increase the sort of absorption, to increase the bioavailability of these nutrients, make sure you're eating them with a meal that does not have anti-nutrients, right? I will continue repeating this until the day I die. If you take these things and you also eat bread and you also eat like leafy greens and legumes, it's not going to do shit. You have to take this with eggs. You have to take this on an empty stomach sometimes. You have to take this with beef, with cheese, with these things, with fruits, right? With avocado and these things, like even certain vegetables like carrots, they won't fuck up your absorption, right? So keep in mind gluten, phytic acid, all these things, oxalates, tannins, etc. Zinc. The second one is magnesium, or the third one, it's magnesium. Now, what's the implementation here? I want you to take magnesium glycinate, about 200 to 300, even 400 if you want to, right before you go to sleep. Right? Magnesium glycinate, it's tremendous. Magnesium is good for sleep, and also glycine is good for sleep. It's actually a neurotransmitter. Glycine actually has its own receptors in the brain, which means when you put in magnesium glycinate on an empty stomach before you go to sleep, that glycine is going to it's going to detach from the magnesium and it's going to go to its own receptor. And magnesium is going to be metabolized and used in the cell, ATP production, all that stuff, right? So magnesium glycinate before bed. Fuck, I can't write for shit, man. Jesus Christ, before bed. So magnesium. Number 4 is selenium, right? I talked about selenium just previously. So selenium, the same. It reduces SHBG, right? It's something that's needed for this whole thing to work. Again, you can take, where's my selenium? You can take a selenium supplement like this. Just take 200 milligrams. Actually 200 micrograms to be precise, or you can eat 4 to 5 Brazil nuts before you go to bed, right? Just don't eat those nuts on your first meal. Because nuts also, they have quite a significant amount of these anti-nutrients, right? Seeds, nuts, these things, they don't want to be eaten, right? So keep that in mind. Selenium, if you take the supplement, take it with your zinc, take it with your boron, take it on, with your first meal, so that also your body overcompensates by using those nutrients better, right? Easy. And number 5, I don't have to sell you on this, it's vitamin D3. You know, 8,000 I use, with fat every single day. I take it 5 days a week because my vitamin D3 levels are actually quite high, so I don't need so much. You can also, you know, you can go out on the sun in the morning. It's good for your serotonin and everything. Vitamin D3 is a magical vitamin. It's actually also, it literally acts like an antidepressant. Go watch my video on vitamin D3. It's magical. So we have 5 nutrients. We have the energy of the body. Let's talk about something very, very niche, right? Let's talk about ferritin. I'm gonna do this. Let's talk about ferritin. Now, I don't even know if you spell it like this. I think so, ferritin. Ferritin is basically a protein that carries the iron in your blood to the cells, right? It carries it. Now, when you have elevated iron, when you have something called an iron overload, you have higher ferritin levels because it has to be carried to the cells, right? Just like cholesterol has a carrier, just like testosterone has a carrier, we just found out. Ferritin is the carrier. So if you test your blood and you have higher ferritin, that means you have higher iron. That means you have an overload of iron. Now, iron is actually quite a toxic metal. It's very hard for your body to remove iron, right? And men, we struggle with this problem a lot, especially us men, which eat a lot of red meat, which cook our red meats on steel, right? On steel pans. We struggle with this because we actually consume a lot of iron. Women, it's a bit different because they menstruate, so they lose a lot of their iron, but we don't. Now, if you can say, okay, I'm not going to eat a lot of red meat, fair enough, go ahead. But if you look at the way that we've been living, let's say 100,000 years ago, the way we've been developed to live, right? As I always say, you look back in time, you look into anthropology history, you consider, okay, we've evolved to live in these conditions with these requirements, with these needs. What do we miss now and incorporate them? We used to fight a lot. We used to kill other cavemen. We used to get like scratched by tigers and all that shit and like fight animals. We bled a lot, right? We lost a lot of blood. We don't anymore. And if you go down this rabbit hole, down the rabbit hole of ferritin and SHBG, you'll realize that like this isn't just stupidity, right? Ferritin really will increase your SHBG. So if you ever get a blood test for this and see if it's too high. If this is too high, if it's over the range, give blood, give your blood away, because that means your iron is too much. You have too much iron in your blood. And iron, actually, too much iron, it's not good for SHBG. It's actually not good for a lot of things. But here we're precisely talking about testosterone. So again, what if you don't want to do a blood test? What if I don't know, it's too expensive, or I don't really know how to get it done? Well, then think about this. Have you been eating like a lot of meat, a lot of red meat specifically, a lot of organs, right? Organs have a lot of iron. Have you been eating a lot of this recently? Have you been cooking on steel? If yes, maybe you should give blood anyways, right? Bro, at the least you're doing a good thing, at the least. Because your blood, if you're watching a video like this, if you're watching a video how to increase your free testosterone and what it means and all that stuff, bro, you're already doing these things. You're already eating healthy. You're already not eating like McDonald's shit. You're already sleeping. You're already not drinking. You're already avoiding seed oils. You know what I mean? So your blood is literally gold, man. So this is it. This is ferritin. Make sure this isn't too high. If this is too high, it's going to increase your SHBG and therefore decrease this whole thing. We're done. So we talked about why this is important. We talked about how to make this work best. We talked about keeping your blood glucose level low and how to do that so that there's always docking sites for the testosterone to dock onto the albumin, so that then because of shear stress, it can be released and enter into the cell directly, right? We talked about the meat of the video, which was decreasing SHBG levels. Obviously, there are megalin receptors on cells. However, nonetheless, we want to have as little of this as possible so that we have as much of this as possible so that more of this is actually made. How do we reduce SHBG levels? Well, we can do this through maintaining always high energy in our bodies. The way we do this is either we eat a lot with carbohydrates, everything we bulk, and if we do cut, we make sure our body is adapted to the cut, not just get rid of kilocalories, but actually make sure the body is fat adapted, right? Increase the efficiency of beta oxidation, of lipolysis, right? The processes that occur when you actually do convert fat into energy. We also look into at the micronutrients, so a proper boron intake, especially if you're on, if you're eating predominantly animal-based, you're not going to be eating a lot of like raisins and all these things, right, which have a lot of boron, or avocado. You might be eating avocados, but these fruits, right, prunes and all these things. You have adequate zinc, 15 milligrams zinc citrate, magnesium glycinate before bed, 250 milligrams thereabouts. Selenium, you can take 200 milligrams microgram supplement. You can also take a couple of Brazil nuts before you go to bed, like 4 or 5 Brazil nuts. And also vitamin D3, 8,000 IUs, 5 days a week or every single day. Then we also talked about ferritin, which is the protein that actually carries the iron through your blood. How do we make sure that this is in adequate levels? What can we do in order to, to systematize this, to make this, the way it's supposed to? So, yeah, that's about it, boys. Now, for all of you that stayed, I'm talking to you, the killer over here, because the dopamine addicts are gone. If this resonates with you, if this is the type of shit you like to optimize, the type of shit you like to watch, I haven't said this, but I've achieved 1,500 nanograms per deciliter testosterone from basically developing like a woman through puberty. Here you got a screenshot of all that stuff. So if you want to take your stuff on, if you want to just learn, okay, subscribe to the channel, hit the button, whatever, etc. I'm going to be releasing bangers every twice a week. But if you want to take this shit on steroids, if you want to do this in 3 months and not 3 years, right? You can use my expertise, my 10 years of like struggling with this problem, because I fucking threw the kitchen sink. I've done everything from like diet, nutrition, workouts, sleep, everything, man. Like 3 cold showers a day, semen retention for like 5 months without fail to see how my body reacts. I've done it all, you know what I mean? Even like psychological stuff, everything. So if that's what you're interested in, below's a link. It's a link to my calendar. If you have 30 minutes, you want to talk to me for 30 minutes, it's obviously free. We're just talking to each other. However, with the goal of, if we do like each other, if we want to work together, the goal is to eventually get you on a program with me. It's a coaching program. I do it very differently to most people, so I'll tell you all about it, when we do talk. Anyways, so I'll see you in the next one, yeah? Bye.